that's how you scale. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you scale something.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Foret.
And I'm Justin Neagle, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is
Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the three pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guest is Jesse Light, president and owner of SML Consulting, Structural and Forensic Engineering, based here in Phoenix, Arizona. SML blends structural and forensics engineering with mechanical product design. They specialize in building, attached, and freestanding applications using integrated software tools to streamline the engineering process. Jesse is a licensed structural and civil engineer licensed in 36 states. As you can imagine, he's very passionate about math and science, bringing precision and innovation mindset to every project. SML has been rocking for nearly 40 years out here in the Southwest, but also has a national footprint across diverse projects. And on a personal note, Jesse is an avid hockey player. And even though I'm a Blackhawks fan and White Sox fan, so I might not like this, he has been a lifelong LA Kings and Chicago Cub fan. More on that another day, hopefully. Nonetheless, Jesse, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. So tell us a little bit about you. How did you get into the industry? And then tell us about SML.
Well, I graduated from Cal Poly Pomona in 2001. I was going to go into aerospace and, I'm a mechanical engineering guy. So I was into systems design and alternative energy systems and things like that. I thought I was going to get into the structures department at Honeywell. 9/11 happened. And next thing I know, I couldn't get into aerospace because it completely shut down. So while I was in college, I was drafting for a structural engineer building custom homes. And so I ended up coming out to Arizona, which was my plan, and ended up actually getting into track home design. So I did that for 5 years, got a PE, ended up actually trying to go out on my own briefly, which was a struggle. Didn't realize how hard that was when you don't have any help at all. And during that time, while I was kind of struggling, I kind of put in some applications at some places, and one of those was Orbital Sciences. I ended up actually landing a short-term gig at Orbital Sciences as a mechanical test engineer. So I started doing some test engineering over there on rocket ships and stuff, and that was pretty awesome. But because I was a contract worker and I didn't have an actual contract with Orbital, it was through a temp agency. When my contract ended, I didn't realize that in the aerospace industry, the contracts tend to be like, a couple year period or something, and I kind of came at the tail end of one. It expired and suddenly I was out of a job, and I was like, okay, now what do I do? A person I was working with in the track home industry had moved over to Starling Madison Lofquist, and I kind of reached out to her. She brought me in for an interview. Next thing I know, I ended up in this company I'm at now. I worked up from, just a PE. I got my SE, became an associate, bought into the company, became vice president, then now I'm president. But along the way, I've been using all of my tools as a test engineer, doing testing procedures for mechanical products for the solar industry. But because I've done all this track home design, I know how to design homes, and I'm now putting all that together. So that's where I kind of support the solar industry. I have 6 clients that do hardware for solar manufacturing, for attachments and things. And so that's where I kind of bring the mechanical side to that. But my mechanical background really, because of production, I always wanted to make stuff work in this production environment. How do I make things faster or stronger or better, with less effort and add value to the client? So I ended up kind of really evolving with some really lightweight programming to integrate all of the systems together. And that's why I'm kind of talking to you today.
Yeah, no, the first time we chatted and you started explaining what you were building in regards to how can we take the engineering plan as well as permits, all these different things. How can we do that for a user and make it almost instantaneous is what it feels like in comparison to what the reality is today. I was like in awe. I was like, oh my God. And you're like, yeah, it's just what I do. And I'm like, no, what you're doing is amazing. So, I'd love to dig in more about that automation. Essentially, there's AI components to this, but like you've essentially started saying like, how can we automate stuff? You know, that beautiful mechanical brain of yours said we can do this more efficient. So let's start talking about that.
I realized that there were some steps along the way that every project needed to have kind of refined, because if you don't understand the full scope of work and what jurisdiction it's going to, so you can't define the loads, so you need all those things in position in order to do the job. And so we've tried to develop a way to streamline that process and make sure you get it right the first time. If you get the jurisdiction wrong the first time because of like a line in the sand, if you will, you're on this side of the street instead of that side of the street. It says Phoenix on the address, but you're really Maricopa County. It can change your whole design. And so how do we eliminate that error? And then by doing that, you eliminate using the wrong wind code. You eliminate all these like other things that cause you to have to redo the job from scratch for free. And the client's now 2 weeks behind. How do you eliminate that? So we were trying to figure that out, and we've kind of developed some tools to integrate with our accounting software. So we put all our project information into one database with our client information. That gets exported over to Excel. Excel communicates with AutoCAD and MathCAD, InterCalc, Risa 3D. We can basically have everything stored in one data location, the code, the wind speeds, seismic. It populates out to all those programs. The programs are now able to talk to each other through through Excel. And then at the end, you have data going back and forth without having to check all the data over and over and over again, hand input all this data. It kind of does it very seamlessly, very few errors. I'm able to actually add value to the client, not only by speeding everything up, but I'm able to look at every single load case individually rather than looking at kind of a blanket overall general load case of extreme values, which a lot of engineers do. So by doing every load case individually, I'm able to optimize base plates and anchor bolts and all these other components for them. So again, adding value to the end user. Anyway, that's what I'm doing with the automation process there, and having one central database with Excel being this kind of intermediary between all the softwares.
So where did you start this? There was an idea, right? Efficiency is always the idea, but I think you started from a spot and then you expanded from that. And I would also say that you didn't start in sort of a programming background either. Is that correct?
No, I did just a little bit of programming. I took 1 year of programming in high school. I took one class in college, and as a mechanical engineer, we were always kind of taught to break everything down into system components and then figure out how to get them to kind of communicate within each other. So even though we're not electrical engineers and we weren't really programmers, we still needed to do just enough to be able to get a light to turn on or off, or like a machine when you're going through a conveyor belt. Okay, this first process happens and then it manipulates and gets another process happens. And so we were learning on how a process can kind of go through in a logical sense so that it happens the same way every time and it's repeatable. Right. So I kind of used that methodology and applied it to this structural civil engineering.
All right.
How long did it take you to think through? Obviously, you were doing these things already. You were already doing it. Now you just want to automate it. We talk about this all the time of you have to have great processes before you drop in technology to save, to save the day, right? Because you can't build something that's not, you can't build it with the technology at the same time because you don't have an actual process. So you were doing these functions, but where did you start saying okay, where can I save time? Because that's essentially, my guess is your brain is efficiency, time save. Where can that be? What do I need to do? And then how did you chunk that out into the different processes?
It was all about trying to figure out what can all the different softwares actually talk to. Right. So once I figured out that Excel, it's just a database, that each of the different programs I was using can actually communicate one way or another through that intermediary, then I could actually see the whole picture. Okay, this could be the chain of events. It goes into Excel, it goes out, does this process, comes back through, goes back over here. It would jump back and forth like 4 times before I was all said and done. But why it added efficiency was because, and reduced errors, I didn't have to hand input data from one system into the next system and keep doing that, because every time I would QC QA the process, when the junior engineers were doing the work, I would find that the errors were always those things. It was always somewhere along the line, you're 10 keying it and you're hitting the wrong button. It's simple as that. Well, the computer doesn't do that. It just goes information, populate, copy, paste. It's really fast, happens in a blink of an eye. I barely have to check it now. I just have to spot check some stuff, and it really improved the efficiency. But finding that intermediary, that one thing that can communicate to them all, was it 3CPO or whatever, right? You have that one guy, he has all the languages, he knows all of it, so he can kind of translate from one to the next, back and forth. And that was kind of the key.
So, okay, step back for a second. When you started doing all of this, because it was very manual, right, along with the error checking and whatnot, how long did it take to do the processes that you were doing? And then where are you at today?
With one of our clients, it's a repeat client. They manufacture vacuums, canopy shade structures. So you go through the automated car wash, you come out, you vacuum out your car. There's these like shade canopies so that, it doesn't, you're underneath the shade while you're trying to vacuum out your car.
Very important in Arizona, Will. He's in Chicago, so he doesn't know.
Shade. Oh yeah. Chicago people.
Sorry, I don't live in the 120 degree world. I live in the, somewhere between 80 and 100 degree world.
It's only summer. 110 today. It's not, it's
easy.
A dry heat.
A dry 110.
Oh my gosh. Well, we had the same vacuum stand at this location and another vacuum stand at another location. They always had different design loads, but the geometry was the same. And what was happening originally was we would get the new project and every engineer would start basically from scratch, from zero. They would draw the model from scratch. They would load the model from scratch. They would do all these processes. It would take like 8 to 10 hours to design one of these things. But I'm looking at it when I took the project over and I was like, this is the same geometry every time. All we're doing is changing out loads. How do we do that? Well, you can export the recent 3D model right into an Excel file. You can take MathCAD loads, override the old loads with the new ones, and then make a new RISA model. I was like, well, that's not very difficult. And now I don't have to hand input any of those loads, and it happens like that. And it went from 10 hours to about 2 hours of engineering, and my QC QA time went from 2 hours to about 15 minutes. Yeah, it was nuts. I literally did a recent study, and I think that I was underwater on that by something. We did like $1 million worth of sales. I was $120,000 under, over budget on all my stuff. So I was losing money, and now I'm consistently about 67% of my budget.
Whoa, that is a huge improvement.
That's how you scale. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how you scale something.
It changed the whole dynamic. It went like we were not sure if we should keep the client to, well, this is one of our best clients. And now that we actually have them on almost auto pay, I'm getting paychecks every week from them, It's great.
Okay. Awesome. So there was another piece to this, which is, let's talk a little bit about AI, because, you do leverage a little bit of AI. Can you talk a little bit about, we talked previously about GSN, General Structured Notes.
Okay, yeah.
Can you talk about, what that is first to the less than informed, and then talk about where you play in that?
Let's see. So, well, as far as general structural notes go, they tend to give all the specifications for the materials that you're using on a job and kind of more or less just their basic properties. Because while we're not going to tell a contractor how to go and build the thing, we show them what the end result is in our details. The process, the means and methods on how they do it is their duty. But the general structural notes are kind of the ingredients that they need to use to make sure that the recipe comes out right. If they use the wrong steel, then it's not the right product. So as far as AI goes, though, we don't use AI to do any general structural notes. We have a very lengthy general structural notes that we hand go through and make sure that we only use the right general structural notes for the project. There was one kind of side project we did where we were using a little AI, but it was mostly to go scrub the internet for some information, pull it back and put it in a report. But it wasn't the actual general structural notes that were being modified. We were using kind of templates where we would toggle through on our forensics reports, which parts of the GSN we wanted to populate, but we weren't using AI to augment those at all. We wanted the verbiage to be precise. So we can't have AI going in there and fiddle-faddling with any of the general structural notes. So as far as AI goes, I'm not using that for general structural notes. What I am using it for is how do I make Excel do some things, right? There's some scripting you can do. Well, the AI right now, I tell it, this is the script I need. I need to automate this small little process, and I do it incrementally. I do a little piece at a time, right? Because I'm not a major programmer. I can do little bits. I can fine tune some stuff, but I can't write it from scratch. So I'm like, this is what I needed to do. I'm using Excel. I'm using MathCAD. How do I write a script that will do this process? And it will get me like 85% there. Some of it works. And then I'll go, this is the error I'm getting. Can you fix it for me? It fixes it. I try it again. I go through a rinse and repeat process until suddenly it works. I jump up and down, go around in circles. I go and tell everyone in the office, I got it to work finally, and I'm really excited about it because I feel like I programmed something when I really didn't. I just kind of like told it what I needed it to do. And it usually helps me. So that's why I like AI.
That is the power of it, though. And I think that people think that it's just you ask to do something, and then it's like the Jetsons or like some far future reaching thing. It's like, well, no, it's not that. But it does allow you to like figure things out in a way that, hey, this would be X amount of hours of research or trying to learn a skill set, coding specifically. And it's like, well, if you know what you're looking for and you know what the results should be, then it's like, okay, well, how do I just get the AI to do the coding piece for me? Because then that's the heavy lift instead of having a developer on staff or outsourcing it to a developer that can be extraordinarily costly.
I will have to say that I did get some help. And what I did, though, is I leveraged my local university, right? Okay. So they have some undergrads over there. They're always looking to get some internship time at different locations. And I happened to find somebody that he was an ex-Marine and he was going to school for data science. And so he was doing some Python coding and stuff. And so I hired him while he was going to school. He's actually still here. He just graduated, but so for a minimal cost, I think, it was, I don't know. I don't think it was $20,000 for the entire year, but he was on part-time, but that's what I did. And we were able to automate several processes. So I didn't have to go out and pay top dollar, $150,000 a year for a major programmer. He was getting some education while helping me out. And so I think you can do that. There are other options. I use for one client, a company called TopTall. They locate very high quality people all over the world that can do programming, front end, back end, web design, cloud stuff. So I do kind of leverage that too. I kind of have a client paying for that part, so I don't have to pay it out of pocket. So if you can kind of figure that part out, get a client to kind of want something bad enough that they're willing to kind of help you R&D that into existence, then, so there are ways kind of around that. If you don't have a big R&D budget, which we don't, we're 25 people, $5 million firm. We're not huge. I'm on the NCSEA AI grant team, and I'm the only small business in there. These other companies are, 1,000 people strong, KPFF, some of these other guys, they're big players, right? But the overall industry is really made up of, small guys like me. They have these little engineering firms. Well, how can they do this? Well, use stuff you already have. Microsoft 365 has all sorts of tools. I'm learning how to use Power Automate right now. That's amazing. I have a Microsoft form. It goes through this Power Automate process. It goes into Excel. I can run some scripts. I'm having it update PDFs with actual site addresses on there, and then digital sealing that and emailing that to a client. That I'm almost done with, and I did that one by myself using ChatGPT AI to help me do the programming. But Power Automate, it's just like a step-by-step process. I don't have to know all the code. It kind of does a lot of that for me, but I'm using AI to help me troubleshoot it. Oh, I'm getting this error. How do I fix that? Okay, rinse and repeat. Do that over again. I spent 12 hours on it. It's about half done, a couple weekends. So I'm almost got that dialed in.
So 12 hours, halfway done. So 24 hours, give or take, you're going to have this done.
Yeah.
So let's talk about return here for a second, so that people understand the math behind leveraging AI. It's not external, it's internal, right? You're trying to do internal efficiencies. Mm-hmm. So what is this going to help you to do ultimately from a time, right? Trying to put some math to it.
Okay, right. So what I'm going to be charging, I'm going to be charging my client $40 a letter, but it's going to be fully automated. Right now, I have to hand process every one of these letters, put the address on it, do the processing, send it out. 1 hour of my time is $300 an hour, right? So effectively, I spend 24 hours of time on the weekend, and get this thing dialed in, get it ready to go. And then this process can now happen every time they run it. I'm getting $40. And I've already talked to a second client. They want to do the same thing. So now I can use that same coding I did for another client and have them doing the exact same process. So I believe that it's always about, putting in the effort on the front end to not like sit on your butt on the back end and just collect money. I mean, ultimately I'm like run a machine at night while I'm sleeping and wake up, look at my bank account and see that there's more money in there than when I went to bed. That's ultimately I go. I'm a machine guy. So that's what I want.
Well, in a way, you've just created a pseudo reoccurring revenue model for engineering firms. Holy cow! The magical reoccurring revenue that everyone's looking for that no one thinks is possible in this industry, yet it is very possible.
I do that. And then I'm also doing a online sales tool for pool standards. And so right now we have 2 people processing pool standards. That's between $400,000 to $500,000 a year that we're doing in pool standards just in the Phoenix Valley. Once I have that fully automated online, the client will go and do all the work online, pay me the money. And then once I have it working in Phoenix, I'm going to roll that out to Las Vegas and Orlando and Atlanta and, wherever heck I can possibly get them interested in my product, wherever they're pulling permits for pools. That's where I think I can add value there because I can turn this around almost instantly. It's already done. The engineering's done. All they have to do is answer all the questions correctly to qualify to buy the pool standard. And once they've done that, then the pool standard invoice will automatically be issued. Once they pay it, they automatically get an email with the engineering file. I want to turn that into, retaining walls and site walls and some other products as well. But that's already a CAN process that I'm doing now internally. And what we also do is in the Phoenix Valley area, we have these on file down at the city already. So they've already reviewed it. They've already given us kind of a pre-permit, if you will. It's not technically a permit. It's on file down there. So when the client buys it from us, they take it down there over the counter. They get a permit. Instead of waiting 3 months in line down at the city of Phoenix, they can get it tomorrow. They can get a permit tomorrow to start building a pool.
Whoa.
Half the time they know they're going to have it tomorrow. So they'll actually start building it yesterday. They're out there digging holes already, even though they don't.
Yeah, don't be telling people that. We're going to have the city cracking down on our podcast.
No, we're busted.
Here.
They never do that. I mean, they never do that.
Nobody ever starts work before a permit's in place.
Not once.
That would be wrong.
I do not recommend that though. I do not recommend that.
Yes. Okay. Well, so somebody could literally just go online, fill in the details of which they need, and then say like, hey, I need a pool in my backyard. Here's the things, whatever metrics I'm looking for. Cool. Awesome. And then you say, yeah, throw it in there. And then we're going to pump you out what the actual plan is as well as go get the permit.
Basically, right? We've had this on file in many of these jurisdictions already. If the jurisdiction doesn't have it on file, we already still have the CAN 4-page engineering package with all the calculations pre-done, ready to go. It's limited. About 80% of the pools fall into the pool standard. They're not very amazing. Not this Hawaii retreat. Those are special. And if you fall into the special category after you go through the system, it will say, well, yours is a little bit special. So you're going to go over to the custom pool department, but it gathers all of our information together in one nice, neat package rather than the designer having to go back and forth with the client 15 times trying to gather all this information. This process will gather all that information, throw it over in a file, already pull a job number, already pull the client information. They fill that in for you. That's the beauty of this thing. So they're in control of what phone number you put in there and the email address. If they get it wrong, it's on their fault, not on your fault. They can go in, they have a client portal and they can fix it. So if it's not going to the right place or they want to have another person, they can add that in there. So it's going to be very nice. I'm beta testing it right now. We're going through the fine tuning process. It's not live yet. I would love to be able to, I wanted to have it live so I could, tell you it's live, but unfortunately I think I'm probably beta testing for the next month just to make sure it's working right, because I have to make sure that I'm covering all my cues here, because I want to make sure that I'm not selling a pool standard where I shouldn't be selling a pool standard, right? And I do believe I'm actually putting in more checks now than I had before. So I think I'm actually improving the process. I have some really cool tools that are going, you put in your site address, it will go online and make sure that it's not sitting on a cliff or something, right? So it's on flat land and they're So it's doing some checks and balances that are a little bit additional to what, my admin team was doing before.
Got it. So that's incredible. I will say that I was just a couple weekends ago, I was at a unbelievable pool that had like literally a lazy river that surrounded it. I mean, it was pretty legit.
We do those.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. Once the beta is done and you're good to go, we'll throw it in the show notes, no matter when that is. So just, so if a listener is listening to this episode, not immediately when it's released, we'll make sure that you'll have that in there. So
there was one pool we did where we had a top pool and a bottom pool in the same building, and there was a water slide that went from the top pool down to the bottom pool. I mean, our custom pool department literally can do any pool. There's only been a handful of pools that we haven't done because it was like that big. Like this guy lived on a golf course. It was like a $10 million backyard. You know what I mean? I didn't have 10 guys to work on this. They wanted it done in a month. I'm like, I can get it done in like 3 months, with the 3-4 people I had working on it, but it would have been full time. And so for the most part, though, we'll do just about any pool out there. We do in the Valley. We do a lot of trick pools on Paradise Valley. We have them all hanging off the mountain out there. There's tons of them.
Ooh, those are awesome.
They're really great.
Well, we need to get a office in PV so we can have one of these pools. So I'm just throwing it off there.
Okay, duly noted. I know what we're doing next. Got it.
I'll rent some office space from you.
So I want to talk a little bit about fees in the engineering industry, right? Is it straight time materials? Is it flat fee, flat bid? Or is there a little bit of both? How does it work?
Generally speaking, it's both. And some clients really want to know that there's at least an upper limit on what they're going to pay, right? And I totally respect that. I kind of dabble in all of it. What I would prefer to do is I like to get people fixed fee because they know what their fee is. If we end up spending more time, they know they're not going to go over that. So most people will accept that. What I do like about fixed fee as well is that as I spend all this time and effort up front, which takes time and effort, I'm investing in myself, it will speed up the process later. So right now, that first time that I do that job, it might cost me 3-4 times more. But if I know I'm going to be doing several of those types of jobs, then as I do more and more of them, eventually I'm way under budget, right? And that's the goal, is that I can make the systems work for me so that after just a handful of these, I've got all that in place and it's more or less automated in a lot of the steps, and I can then still be a fixed fee. So everybody's getting charged the same. I've kind of like now all the clients are paid a little bit into this process that I've made, and they all reap the rewards that they get this product way faster. It's more uniform. It's less prone to errors, adds value to the client usually.
Okay.
Now, we are deep believers in the flat rate. Certainly at Spot Migration. That's how we operate. We don't operate in any other time and material way. So what we found at least is it changes the relationship. Like it just changes how you interact, because you're not like, oh, it's going to be an extra this or it's going to be an extra that, or all these like nickel and diming kind of places where it happens over and over again. Certainly in the AEC space, change orders are a thing that lots of people get pissed off about. So looking at this market, we're like, well, let's not piss them off and do change orders after change order after change order, because that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we try to be very good about what our scope of work is and be very clear with the client and what their expectations are. If you get halfway through the project and they completely change the entire design, there's stipulations in there that we can go to a hourly rate and here's our fee schedule. If they want, we can renegotiate that and get a new fixed fee based on the new scope of work. I'm fine with that. And so sometimes we renegotiate and do that. Other times we just go to a hourly rate at that point. But all that's provided to them up front, and it's fairly clear. And, generally speaking, as long as it's warranted, like I said, they're the ones causing the change, or, and usually it's the client or the owner. So the client of the client is doing the thing. They should have the same provisions in their contract. And what I found is not everybody does. And then that's when I think the strife can happen, because they're not getting extra fees. So why should you?
Yeah.
But you have to be very clear on your scope of work. You have to make sure that's outlined very clearly. Like I document that, I'm trying to train everybody to do the same thing. I got this email on this date. It had these elements in it. The contract documents that they provided to me had this date on them, Rev Cloud 2, so if all of a sudden I'm in Rev Cloud 4 and a bunch of stuff changes, I can go back and go, okay, I did the original scope of work. Here's my additional services for the extra 3 scope items you had, and here's an additional fee for that. And I try though, before it gets to the I'm billing stage, you want to have that conversation with them again and let them know that to what to expect. I don't want to send a bill out that they don't know it's coming, because I don't want a bill not get paid, right? I want those invoices. They get it and they're like, yep, okay, that's what I thought it was supposed to be. I'm paying it. Bam. It's the ones where they get it and they don't expect it that they go, oh, well, and they go, I'm going to put that back there because I don't have money for that. And I didn't know it was even coming. I didn't plan for it, I'm not saying that we don't end up in that position. I just don't like being in that position. So how do we, kind of avoid that? And avoiding it by having that the conversation as soon as possible is the right path forward.
Communication, the solver of 90% of business problems.
Indeed. Well, as engineers, though, we tend to not want confrontation. We don't want to disappoint people. And so when we go back there and we're like, oh, now it's going to be more, it's sometimes hard for engineers to have that conversation. They love going in their corner. They love doing calculations. They don't want to have that management interaction with people. And some people just aren't really cut out for that. They even get promoted up to associate. And then they're like, well, I don't like all this client interface. I want to go back to just doing design work. I don't want this. I'm like, I'll take a pay cut just to go back to there. And we're like, well, all right, that's fine with me. I mean, if that's really what you want, I would rather you do what you want. And, you get promoted. There has always been this rule in some industries where once you get promoted, you can never go back down. And I think that's kind of silly. I feel like if someone has a real, sometimes you get promoted too highly and next thing you know, you don't do a good job anymore, right?
That's
you kind of work your way up. Yeah, right. That's the one.
The Peter Principle, I think, states that you get elevated to the level of your incompetence or something like that. Yeah. So as you get promoted to the level of your incompetence.
Yeah. You got right out of the jobs you were doing really well into a job you suck at. And next thing you know, you're actually not adding value anymore to the company or the clients. And they find a way to get rid of you because now you're overpriced.
Yeah. It's the pathways, right? Career pathways are interesting because it's like, do you want to be a single contributor that just does the work and that's it? Or do you want to lead teams? Those are such different skill sets.
Yep.
And people just say, promoted is good.
Yep.
And it's like, well, not if it's down the wrong path for you.
Yeah.
Then it's a disaster because then even if you're just stretched, right? You're just trying to get the skill set. It's like, you feel like you're drowning every day because you're not good at the thing that you're being asked to do. Right. Which is unfair to the individual, which sucks really bad. And so I totally agree with you. Hey, if that's not the thing you want to do and you want to just go back to, just rocking out the work, cool. That's fine. But obviously it comes with a pay cut to that, or the pay reduction from where you were to back to work.
Yeah. And the scale sometimes hurts people, but I think if they're more happy, then they realize actually it was worth it. I didn't have to talk to clients every day. Okay. Well, that's worth something to me,
Yeah.
And as, a leader, you have to kind of watch your guys or girls and make sure that they're in the right place, right? You're always trying to make sure that they have all the tools they need to succeed. And if part of that is that they're in the right place in the right job, then that's part of it, right? But if they need a license of AutoCAD, get them the license, get them what they need to succeed. And sometimes that is going around in a circle and they finally figure out what they really want. And everything, but they don't know that until they've kind of gone, to these other places. Once they've seen what the other places really do, they can then make a real decision on, do we want to do that or do we want to do something else? So you just have to have really good conversations with people and let them know that I am here to support you. So this is a choice that you get to help make. I don't want to dictate everything to you. I'd rather you buy into whatever you're going to be doing here, because the more buy-in from you, the better you do in your job.
I think this is a good segue to kind of talk about AI, but in a different sense in terms of the long-term play for AI, because AI is already affecting people's jobs and the way they do things and what they want to do, right? Efficiency. Where do you see long-term play for AI? And even in the context of everything from day-to-day job to, are there roles that are no longer going to exist? Or new roles that are going to exist?
Well, I definitely think that you could probably do more with less, but the industry seems to be thinning out in the sense that there are a lot of people retiring. There were a few events that have happened in recent history that have caused some people to kind of decide, hey, I'm hanging it up. I'm done. And this AI revolution is going to be one of those. Certain people just don't want to be in the tech world. They just weren't. They barely use computers, frankly. They're at the end of their tenure and they're ready. They were ready already to retire. So this is just one more thing that's like, oh man, I'm just done. I can't even deal with that. So we're going to have people leaving. And I don't believe that they're being filled. The positions aren't being filled as fast as people are leaving. So I think what we're going to be doing is we're going to be leveraging these tools to make people more efficient on the admin side as well. Admin is overhead. As much as we need admin to do things, we need to also kind of keep that down to who's effective at doing their job. We need people collecting money. We need people, doing HR. We need all these things. But at the same time, we don't want to be too heavy in that because they can't bring in new revenue. They can bring in old revenue, but they can't bring in new revenue. So we have to make sure we balance that. And I think they can leverage those tools as well, right? You can go on ChatGPT and put in a scenario and it can help you resolve an HR situation that it's not perfect, but it can definitely give you some very good guidelines. What should you be looking for? When should I be asking for outside help? When am I past the point of where I can be effective here to solve this? So I do believe that in the admin space, it can be very handy, and it can also help for creating like procedures. You can literally show it now, the process you're doing. It can record that and create a procedure for you. These are all the steps you did and record those. Boom. And so now if you needed to, let's say you had to go on vacation and you only had one admin, you now have a procedure book. You can go to the temp agency, have an admin come in there for a week, hand them a procedure book and go on vacation. That process might not have been possible because you didn't have the time to create the process manual, but now maybe you can because AI can help you do that. And now you can have a temp come in and do they might not be able to do all of it, but maybe they can do 75% of it. Okay, great. You don't have them, in the checking account. Okay, but you can still have them opening the mail and, processing certain things and, keeping the day-to-day stuff moving. And maybe you check in on vacation once that whole time rather than like literally almost every day for an hour. You had to check in to make sure things were working, right? So I do believe that there is room for AI to help with the admin as well as the engineering side. I've seen it already. April, my wife, she's our admin director and she has come to love it actually. When I first mentioned it to her, she was, you have these, I don't know, Terminator or I don't know, The Matrix,
Yeah.
You start thinking of like all the bad things that can happen. And, while that's true, if you use it for like the good, if you will, it has powerful, kind of implications. So I believe that it can help across the board, really.
Yeah. Using the force for good and not the dark side, going back to more Star Wars references, is a very big difference, or at least that's certainly how I perceive it.
So AI is really based off of LLMs, large language models. Where do you see in just the day-to-day engineering work where the next, we'll call it short-term evolutions are going to happen, admin or otherwise, on the engineering side?
Well, I am actually working with DePonk right now. He's our University of Houston grad student. He's a PhD student, and he has now helped me develop a tool that we have these huge AutoCAD databases. Just details, just hundreds of details in this thing. But you can't insert 100 details into one package. You have to go font down one detail at a time and then populate it. So what he's done is he's figured out a way for us to like take this huge drawing and it'll hunt down and find the details. And it takes the details and it puts them into their own DXF file. It takes an image of that DXF file. It has the DXF file, and then it actually creates a Python code that can actually redraw the entire DXF file. And what can happen then is, or what's happening now is that it's using AI to create a kind of search mechanism. So it can vectorize the detail in such a way that then you can use a search function to locate the detail. So right now what we have is we have MathCAD, and in the title and the summary of each calculation, it describes what the calculation is and what the outcome is. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those summaries and we're going to then use that as our search inquiry to find the detail in our database. So we can actually just do this search function to go and find AutoCAD. But AI is playing an important role there and creating that ability to go and hunt and find details that we're taking. I don't know. I'm not sure how much time this is going to save, but in theory, it can save a lot of time. I've spent half an hour on a detail hunt and then end up drawing the whole detail from scratch anyway. And you just wasted a half an hour of your time. That happens so often in the engineering profession. It's crazy. And I've been dealing with this in my entire career. This was actually one of the things I thought that we would be able to use Excel for back in the day, because AutoCAD and Excel are both Visual Basic. And I could always put this thing together in my brain. I'm like, there's got to be a way to get the two to like coordinate. You should be able to define a line in AutoCAD. It has a vector, a line, a length. It has maybe a line type, so I can tell if it's a roof truss or a floor truss or whatever it is. And I could import that into Excel, and Excel would go, oh, it's a floor truss. These are my loads. Here's my length. Here's the supports. Design my beam. And it would go through a design, and then it would kick it back out and then say, oh, that should be 2 2x6s, and then goes back into AutoCAD and populates 2 2x6s. So I was always like, oh, that's possible. So that was one of the things that really spawned this whole idea that Excel could be kind of a middleman. And then it just expanded. I realized, well, it actually can talk to more than just AutoCAD. It can talk to all these other programs. Wow, that's amazing. So I think that AI can really help in hunting and pecking and finding these things. And that's one way we're doing it. Another thing we're doing is actually having it in the large language model, is you can take all your Word documents from like 12 years of files and put those into JSON files, and then use search tools to go and find the project you're looking for. We've had 3 major people all leave here, actually more like 4, that had a bunch of knowledge. And when they left, all those projects are still sitting in our database, but we can't go ask them, what project should I go look for to get this thing that I'm doing? So as a go by, right? Well, now we have a search tool that can go there and try to find that project for us by searching through all these Word documents. We're extending that now that we have this AutoCAD tool. We're like, well, now we can actually do that with details too. This will be great. So we can use that to search through 12 years of database. So actually I have more than 12 years. 12 years is kind of as far back as we went, because standards change over time, and we didn't want to go so far back that we're using standards that are so antiquated that we would have to rewrite the whole thing anyway. So I feel like the value was kind of in this time range that we picked 12 years. It was what was in our major database that we knew was valuable to us.
10 years of the typical warranty, right? What people are looking for.
That's the other thing too.
And a little bit more, because after that, the whole litigation life cycle after 10 years really just kind of goes away. So that totally makes sense to me. So the way, as far as search functionality, that's really interesting, especially with the amount of data sprawl that's happening. So for any company really out there, but engineering architecture firms are notorious for this, but they have all these tidbits of files everywhere. I mean, as organized as I've seen companies be, the disorganization, unless you've worked specifically on that project, right? The disorganization around, I only know this amount. And then as soon as the person leaves, the institutional knowledge goes out the window, even though the data is there, right? So either you're recreating the wheel, hypothetically speaking, you're recreating the wheel or building or whatever it is, so many times over. I'm willing to bet that a 4-person team probably can build most anything, or has already built most anything. It's just you can't find it.
Yes. And what you're talking about, the GSN thing, we're using, this kind of database, large language model approach, AI, to go search for things, to go back to some of these old like forensics jobs where we created a really defined GSN for a specific task. How can we go find that so we can kind of, maybe not reuse it verbatim, but we could at least use it as a starting spot to where then we can modify it and update it to the current standard so that we can not have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. And yes, that's what we are trying to do and implementing right now.
So you've got to see the whole life cycle from an engineering perspective, especially since it's, even on the forensic side. What level of importance do you think business owners should put into the understanding of technology? Let's just start there. Because you have, quite frankly, you have from the way you are speaking, you have very high, but you also have you have an engineering mind, right? So the way we hear you, you have a pretty high level, what it would sound like to anyone that's completely non-technical. You have a very high level of understanding. What level of importance would you say, even a non-technical business owner, should put under understanding technology?
I think that if you don't put some emphasis on it, then in the long run, those that do will outcompete you. So if you want to compete for the long term, even if you want to be able to hand your business over to the people under you, right? You got to be able to sell it to somebody. In order to have that business have value, 5 years from now when you go to retire, you need to kind of start investing in that enough to where it'll still hold value at that time. If you're waiting 5 years to get out of it, but you didn't do any of those steps in the meantime, 5 years from now, everybody's going to be so far advanced, your product might not be worth selling or have any value, unless the people underneath you are doing all this behind the scenes and you don't even know it. But I think you need to at least kind of engage some of these guys, the new people coming in, they've grown up in this kind of tech space, right? You might not be involved in it, but find those in your organization that actually find this fascinating and are wanting to get into it. There's almost always, even around here, there's like 4 or 5 guys that this is kind of what they almost live for. They just love kind of figuring out these puzzles, and technology, and I should say the programming behind all of it is kind of like a puzzle. And so if you get some people in your organization that see it that way, harness that. You have to recognize as the owners, what are all the skills of all the people in my company? Find those that really find this I would love to just kind of give up having to deal with clients and go behind the scenes and see how things work and make things, interact. And I don't know. I feel like there's almost always going to be an engineer within your firm somewhere. If you're, 5 or 10 people, you're probably going to find at least 1, if not 2 people that are willing to work together and kind of try to put this together for you. But you have to assign the task. And that was the biggest thing. Once I was put in a position where I could actually kind of tell people what their job is for the day, I kind of tell them, okay, we're not going to have you do that. You have some downtime. I want you to focus on this. How do you get MathCAD to talk to Excel? How do you get RESA 3D to talk to that? And it was like a couple days later, they're back and like, look what I did. And they're thrilled. And I'm like, so am I. This is amazing. So you have to find those that are passionate about those things within your organization. If you don't have anyone, right? Find somebody, bring them in. And usually, like I said, get a undergrad. Find somebody at the local university, bring them in here, part-time even. You start dedicating any sort of resources to it in the long term, I think it will pay off. You just have to kind of know where the little bits of, keep your data together. That's the first thing. Try to find some central way of organizing your data so that then you can have that data work for you. You have tons of data, even if it's just the project data. Excuse me. You have a job number, you have a project address, you have a client name, you have all these little bits of data. Start there. Start by just taking those little bits of data and having that one, you put it in one place and have it talk to all the other things so that you don't have to type in the address on the Word document. Type it on the title block, type it in the calculations. You got to type it everywhere, and then you got to check it. Is it right? Oh my gosh. Because if you get it wrong, you send out a set of plans, and then you have your special inspector going out in the field, and he's clear across town in the wrong place trying to inspect something. You've blown somebody's budget. It's just, you got to keep all that checked. And the thing is, it doesn't even seem like engineering. And that was my philosophy. It was like, how do you actually get engineers to do engineering? Well, you have to make all those little data things that are, they don't really see as engineering, kind of do themselves. Put it in one time, have it kind of populate all the things for you without you having to check it over and over and over again. Have it work for you. Have your data work for you. How do you do that? Get that centralized and then connect the dots, connect them together.
That's historically been a huge problem. Having the data, you actually have it, but you aren't using it, or it's too difficult to try to use. And you've certainly solved at least a good chunks of these problems.
Or multiple source of truths, right?
Yes.
To a single source of truth.
Or that.
It's the biggest thing right there. You don't want to have, like, you look over here and you have a different, well, which one is the right one? I don't even know anymore,
Plan versions, being on the right plan version, or just being the plan is always the correct version, right? There are BIM helps with that, but I'm sure that is a conversation in and of itself. Are people fearful in your organization, or have they described any fear around leveraging AI or even replacing their job?
I would say that the one person that talked to me about this was the admin that is currently processing the pool standards. One of them, we have 2, and one of them is retiring. And the other one is currently going to be teaching all of our clients how to use the online tool. And once that's happened, we'll be kind of still helping as we keep rolling it out to different areas. But we have plenty of other admin work to do. So, right now my wife eventually wants to retire too. So, so how do we work them up through the system so that she can actually not have to work? She does a massage therapy job. She literally has like 4 jobs. And she works here full time. So I'm trying to make it so that she can do other things. And one of those is cross training the admins to all do basically the majority of her job. And I actually feel like that they have been reassured because they can see that I'm very truthful, very honest with them, and I want all of them to succeed and be here long term. So, I have no intention on letting them go. I actually really love my admins, and Albert is just an adorable guy, and he's amazing soul. And he literally is like drove all the way out to Parker to help my brother-in-law move. He doesn't even know this guy. He'd come over to my house for a party and like decorated everything for me. He's just an amazing creature. So it's just like, why, I'm not going to let him go. Even just having him around on a day-to-day basis, having him cheer you up is worth having him around. So I'm going to find a role for him. And that's the thing is I think that, as one thing is solved, I come up with other ideas. Man, look at what else you could do. I mean, even today, talking to Deepak about this tool, now that you have Python code that can draw a detail, now you can, in theory, tell it, oh, instead of that parameter being 5, now it's 12. And it draws it in a different way. And you could just tell it, okay, I want you to draw this thing. Oh, well, no, I want you to actually change these 4 dimensions. Boom. And then it redraws it. And it's just using Python code to draw the detail now. And you don't even have to draw it from scratch on the correct line types, on the correct layers, it knows all that because it dissected it off of the DFX file or DXF file. Yeah, it's really powerful. And then I think that it's a tool that I could probably, create into something I could sell. So that's where I'm probably going to be going into a software company at some point.
Oh, there we go. Engineering into software. We've talked to a few people that have done construction to software, engineering to software. We've talked to a few people about that. So very interesting where this industry is going. I have one more question, and then I think it might be time then for our last question. So cybersecurity is part of sort of the question mark around AI. Okay. Were there any considerations for you guys when it comes to cybersecurity and AI usage, et cetera?
My concern mostly with cybersecurity, frankly, is around this cloud computing stuff. Now that I'm actually have links between the cloud and my server and things like that, that is where I'm very concerned. Right. I'm trying to make these online tools that are going to be readily available to all these people, and that they're kind of a self-service model of engineering for some of these components, very standalone structure type of components that everybody can want for their backyard. Great. Awesome. But if I have that link to anything in my server, next thing I know, they go through crawling through some back door, and now they're in here poking around doing some things they shouldn't. That's very problematic. So I feel like that on the tech side, and because so many people are doing cloud computing now, whether or not it's AI driven or not, that's where I feel like that hole can be like breached. Now, if you're just on the cloud, they have pretty good measures put in place, right? I mean, some of these are huge companies. This is what they invest a ton in, but they're also huge companies. So they become a target, right? Because, you breach this one company. Look at all the booty you can take, right? Where someone going and trying to breach mine, it's like, they don't even know what they're going to find. They're just doing it for the heck of it to say that maybe they'll find something, but I'm a much smaller player, right? So I feel like that's kind of where I'm very concerned about, and making sure that my tools just don't have some breach of security, because I'm not very tech savvy when it comes to the security side of things. It was a big boon for us just to not have credit cards on file in our office space, right? We can be PCI compliant, right? Not having client data readily available for people, right? So our accounting system that's online, they handle all that now. I don't have to do it. And my pool, because they have an API, my pool software has them, when they're on my website putting in their client information, they're really through the API putting it into that software. And then when they put in the project, they're really going into that software and putting the project in my database. And then when they're done and answer all my questions and I say, yes, send them an invoice, that invoice comes out of the API, out of the core BQE core. Just going to put that out there. It's really nice, but that's all I'll say. They have everything put together and I can communicate with it. And the invoicing is what really helped me be more secure, as far as not handling people's credit cards, not handling all their client information on my website. I have them log into a portal, but then everything is inside this nice little secure place, at least more secure, and I don't have to control the security of it. But yeah, I hope that answered at least part of your question. I know it wasn't exactly right. As far as AI goes, I don't know that I'm using it more to just develop pieces of things, not really to do the whole cybersecurity part.
Okay. No, that's good. That's good. You're using it internally instead of essentially allowing for external resources to access your AI or your company through that AI. That's a good way to do it.
Awesome. Well, that means it is time for the last question. Jesse, hopefully you've listened to a couple episodes, and then you'll know exactly what's coming. But me and Will love to ask this question, and it's simple. If you could go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself? Just so you know, in 2005, the White Sox were winning the World Series this year. Just so you're clear on that as a Cub fan. Just throwing that out there. But 20 years ago, you could give yourself some advice, and maybe today I would have been having a different intro for you. You know, that's all I did.
Well, I guess 20 years ago is when I was actually contemplating how do I make AutoCAD and Excel talk to each other and design the things. That was 20 years ago, now that I'm really realizing it, right? So had I really had control of that company at that time, and I would have started implementing it then, I can only imagine where I'd be right now. I'd probably be a much bigger player in this pond, and I've already surpassed 99% of all engineering firms out there. Right now, I'm ahead of the pack, but I would say that I would be much further along had I done that then and had the resources. But I couldn't convince anybody then to actually take me seriously on the subject and invest. If they would have told me, okay, I want you to do nothing this week, but do that thing, that idea you have. Like right now, if one of those guys comes to me and says, hey, I have this idea, I want to do it. I'm like, okay, let's go ahead and reassign some of your projects. I want you to focus on that for a week. And then they come back in 3 days and like, it's already done. Here you go. Because it's amazing what you do. It's like 16, 24 hours of someone's time. They can develop a lot of stuff in that amount of time. But when you have them running around all over the place, just doing the same task over and over and over again, not only are they usually not as happy, but they don't really get to develop these new tools. So I would say, man, if you can give somebody a week or whatever, if even a couple days a week to do that, they'll turn around something in a much shorter time now than they would have then.
That's awesome. That's good. That's good insight, and also just very fitting because obviously our conversation today, 20 years ago, you were already thinking about this. That's wild. This has been great. Before we say our goodbyes, is there a good way that somebody can get a hold of you if they want to chat you up?
Yes, we're on LinkedIn, but we also are going to be updating our website very soon with the new pool tool. So SMLENG.com. So that's small, medium, large engineering. I like to say we do all of it. We do small, medium, large projects, engineering.com. And in the coming weeks, we'll be rolling out a brand new online pool sales tool. We currently serve the greater Phoenix Valley and the state of Arizona for that, but we're thrilled to announce that we're rolling this out to the Las Vegas area in Q4 of this year. So I'm really looking forward to that. And honestly, if you want to reach out and you have another area you want me to come into, I'd be more than happy to put it together for that as well. In addition to pool engineering services, we provide structural engineering support for a ton of rooftop and ground mount solar projects. We have like 4 different manufacturer products that we do. So you could contact us. We'd give you the best option for any of your systems. We're licensed in every state except for Alaska. And I probably need to just get that so I can say that I'm licensed everywhere. And, we're going to be adding a bunch of updates to our LinkedIn profile. So as we just kind of really started taking that seriously, we have some really cool tools. We have the GPR scanner from Hilti, which is, $42,000 GPR scanner. We have the Faro scanner, so we can locate rebar, tell you the size, the depth, and the cover. So that's the Hilti Faro scanner. They overlay each other, and they actually can give you a 3D view inside of a concrete masonry structure, which is awesome. We also have some testers. Our special inspection and testing agency department has a nuke gauge that is kind of semi-nuclear. And what's nice about that is it gives us a tactical advantage because it doesn't require all the security procedures that the typical ones do. And it's called an E-gauge from Troxler. And we can do density tests and moisture tests for soils, asphalt, concrete, that sort of thing. So any projects that you have that need that type of service, we can offer you some help here in the valley. So reach out.
That's cool. I'll drop those links into the show notes. Anything else you'd like to tell the people before we say goodbye?
Just do it. You know what I mean? Like I said, if I was doing this 20 years ago, I'd be well ahead of where I am now. So the best day to start is today.
Hey,
What's
aren't you talking? Yeah, what's the speaking engagement that you're going to be talking at?
Oh, yes. Okay. So I am part of the NCSEA AI grant team, and the NCSEA summit in New York City is happening October, I think it's 13th through 17th, something like that, in New York City. And I will be doing a pre-con speaking engagement. And then I'm also giving the final keynote on Friday afternoon with a couple other guys on the team. We're talking about small businesses, engineering firms, and how they can kind of at least pull all their data together. So I go in more depth on how to do this, how I can help you actually set up the Excel and all this and get all your data in one place. And then in the afternoon, I actually go through some of my other kind of tech stuff that we're doing, but I won't give it all away. There is a synopsis on there, but if you're into that sort of thing, we're going to be there the whole week and would love to have anybody there. Come on. Do it.
That's awesome. Cool. This has been a ton of fun. I have some other things I want to invite you to here in the Valley, but I'll do that off after we're done here. Listeners, I hope you had just as good of a time as Will and I did. And until next time, adios.
Adios. Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Will.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.
Scale.